Hi, readers. Welcome to Goddess Garden Book Chat. Let's pull up our information. Here we go. It always takes me a minute to get started. You think I was new here, right? But that's not the case. Let's get into it, people. This is for adults who love a good novel, regardless of the genre, the weirdness, the planet it takes us to, or the openness we find on the pages. So remember, as always, I want you to be comfortable. I want you to be welcomed, and I want you to be aware. Topics discussed in this book club include everything from basement dungeons to other worlds. I will read them all and share my thoughts in this safe space. So, whether it's in the morning or in the evening, wherever you choose to enjoy this show, I'm so happy you're a part of the conversation. And I hope you'll join me on social pages if you want to do deeper dives into some good books. You can always find me on Discord, which is where the club will meet and discuss books that I'm talking about, we're going to talk about, or books that you may want to share. So join me there and look below for information on how to connect with me on all my social pages. Now, I want to share about the design that I picked and created for today's show. It was interesting trying to come up with something that sort of encapsulated what we're going to talk about. And I think the best way to do that was with those group therapy sessions that these characters go through. Like I said, there's something out there for everybody to read. And I think your path will dictate what you find enjoyable in literature. But this is what I found for us to enjoy today. Today, we're going to enjoy the Make Game series. This is a series of 4 books by author Meg Ann and Kay Loraine. Now, first and foremost, I want you to please take the preface caution seriously for any triggers that you may have, as this book does go on a very intense, dark, exciting, dramatic, and very gory and bloody journey full of danger and triggers, and it's very, very explicit. So, with that being said, understand that if you are looking for a good read in things like how could I describe this? A fantasy romantic drama series, this might be right up your alley. I think that the author's purpose and viewpoint, as I got from this series, was you can reshape all of the mythological people that if you come across as a child that you've read about, you can reimagine every character. It's really where you see them, or maybe in your interpretation of what was said in those pages, you saw something differently. And I say all that to say, in the May games, you're going to be reintroduced to characters that you may know, but you don't know them the way they're being brought to life in this book. Now, let's start with the character Dahlia. And she's sort of the character that all the other characters revolve around. She is pivotal to how these characters go forward in therapy and how she moves in therapy and what they learn about each other and themselves. And everybody's affected by Dahlia except the staff, to some degree the staff, but not in the way that the other patients, let's call them patients. Now, Dahlia sees ghosts, and she's also a very self aware introvert and a banshee. Let's not leave that out. But she doesn't come across that knowledge right away. I'm sharing that with you, trying not to give spoilers here, but there are some things I'm going to have to share that really shape this narrative. Then there's Caspian, the beast. There's Captain Hook. There's Malachi, who's a dragon shifter. There's Tor, the Norse guardian berserker, who's also her first to claim her as his mate. And then Bruno, his keeper. And you'll understand why Tor needs a keeper. Then there's Cain, who in book 1 has lost his identity. He doesn't know who he is, but he has a little dog. I don't want to call the dog cute because the dog is actually his familiar. And the dog's name, I'm going to leave that for readers. And everybody calls the dog by his name because that's the dog's name. And then there's Sorka, who's a vampire. Now, the way that this story lays out is so interesting to me. Book one is called Haunting Beauty. And book one talks about Dahlia's parents and how she came to be, I want to say, triggered into her existence and the things that happened to her before she is a part of therapy at this hospital, Blackwood. Um, then there's Kiki, her best friend and publisher. There's a night that happens that puts Dahlia immediately into the care facility. As she is in this place, this is where she meets these other characters. And according to the things that she's told and the way that she's introduced into Blackwood, this is all for the benefit of making you understand your gift and how to control your gift so that you can actually be a part of society. Yeah, right. So then there's Captain Hook, one of the people that she meets. How can I describe Captain Hook? He's that dude at the club that slides up to you with all the swagger in the world and the looks to back it up, but you know he is going to cause problems. That, in a nutshell, is Captain Hook. He's also a drug dealer. He deals pixie dust in the back of Blackwood to people who are on the edge of Blackwood because there are creatures and things in that nature that preside out here. There's a whole pixie colony. Um, I don't even want to go into what they got going on. They reside in a tree outside of Blackwood Hospital, living their lives doing their pixie thing. Then there is also the issue of a serial killer, the Ripper. But the question then becomes, since no one has actually seen him, and at the time that there are these awful and atrocious crimes committed, not everybody is where they're supposed to be. So there is a real question as to whether or not maybe the Ripper is one of the patients in Blackwood or he's an entity unto himself. Now, Blackwood as a hospital has its own inhabitants of ghosts and all manner of dark things that have been captured that can't be rehabbed into better. So they're locked away, um, and they're sort of kept in a section of the facility that looks and functions like a prison. And it needs to function like a prison because they can't interact with real society. The perception of Blackwood is like any other facility one might encounter where you would go to get better. And everybody is also doing individual therapy along with group therapy. Um, when Tor is introduced into group therapy, it does not go well because as a berserker, he can sense his mate. And it's also one of the more tragic stories because Tor's reason for being there is not like the others, though he is a beast or a creature of fantasy. Um, Tor took on more than he needed to and wound up in the position that he's in. Now, that position is precariously a lot like another character that you'll recognize in a Disney story. And the fate that befalls him is also very similar to the fate that befalls the character in the Disney story. Um, you have so many chances before once the final chance has come and gone, you are as you have been cast by the evil creatures and beings that have placed you there. I think I did a good job of telling you that without doing any spoilers. But I will say that book one ends with Captain Hook doing some Captain Hook type stuff that causes such a problem. It literally tears apart the facility. It causes harm to the doctor running the group. It causes harm to Dahlia and several of the other main characters. It literally sends the facility into a tailspin. So when we get back into book two, we are still a part of the Blackwood facility and we're all still in therapy. But the mating and the claiming has begun because oddly, Dahlia is linked to each one of these people who are around this group. Also, almost in a very um, fortuitous way that they all come together at this time. And meanwhile, the Ripper strikes again. There is another horrific crime. But at one point, one of the victims that befalls the Ripper is Captain Hook. But you see, Captain Hook was where he wasn't supposed to be anyway. So, you want to feel bad for him, but yeah, whatever. um, Dahlia and Captain Hook fall out because of what he does at the end of book one. So it really does become a challenge to keep Captain Hook as part of the core people that she's concerned and cared about and is truly trying to be on the same pathway with. Um, Tor, who has now shifted into the creature that inhabits him, becomes the unstoppable protector in book two. One of the things that you also have to let me back up and say about Captain Hook is that oddly enough, what he does because he feels this undying loyalty and love for Dahlia, and he thinks she's being harmed. He doesn't do it. Well, I mean, he deals drugs because that's the kind of guy he is, but he doesn't do the other stuff, the other horrible things, just because he does them based on this weird motivation of caring for someone. It's so bizarre. This book has a lot of comedic elements also, by the way, because when Dahlia talks to Kiki, um, she relays what's happening within the facility. Um, and I may not have mentioned this, and I think it's important. Dahlia is a writer. She writes fantasy romance novels. And one of the things that she talks to Kiki about as her publisher is a book series that she is supposed to release and what she's struggling with inside the facility in order to complete this book because she's thinking she should rewrite all of the characters in her book based on the characters she's reading about. And I think by the time we get to book two, you see an incorporation of some of the things that are happening to her showing up in her literature. This is also book two is also where Kane sort of unearths what his identity truly is. He's also one of those that pivots around Dahlia, so their connection is unbelievable. And again, it goes back to characters that you're going to recognize from other stories, but they've been manifested and reimagined here. Then we introduce a new patient who is a succubus. And I've never read a book that talked about a succubus. I really didn't know what a succubus was, but her main power is by touching her, coming into contact with a succubus, heightens your lustful intent or your drive. So she creates a whole nother level of problems. And then there's the reality of Blackwood that comes to fruition in book two, which is fascinating. But there's someone that is not really mentioned throughout book one and book two as a pivotal character. But as you get to the end of book two, you start to realize this is somebody that you should pay attention to because this individual literally captures two of the four horsemen. She also captures Grimm, and she's a witch. So when I really got through where all of this was coming and going, and then between the raucous sessions of mating that they go through and the serial killing that's going on, and feeling for Tor and trying to keep your eye on Captain Hook and wondering what the heck is Dahlia going through, and the therapy sessions. All the ongoing therapy sessions. This book is such a journey and it is such a great ride. I highly recommend it if you can navigate stories like this. This is such a great time. There's a lot of creative value in the way all of these characters are reimagined. And let me say that quite by accident, this is probably the third series where Captain Hook has been reimagined. I can't wait until we go into the Neverland stories that I found. Are completely out of control. But I honestly think that of all the characters, if I had to say that I had a favorite right now, I'm rooting for Kane. I've only completed books 1 and 2. I completed book 2 today. But I'm going to finish the entire series and then I'll go back and let you know how many pages in total it's going to take to wade through all of this good stuff and give you some more of the overall arc of what it would take to get through it. But I think it's worth your time. I think overall this was such a interesting way to spend time inside of a story as an adult, and it does take you putting on your adult underwear sometimes because it gets crazy. Um, I'd have to go in again. I own them. I will read them again just for clarification. There's so much going on. I feel like it reminds me of the latest Marvel movie that's out, Wolverine and Deadpool. There's so much going on that I'm gonna have to unpack it over and over again so that I really get a good grasp on what's happening. So let's get to the ratings because I know as a club, we want to know where we stand on how we feel about this. And rating number 1 is slow clap. Rating number 2 is snaps. Rating number 3 is an applause. Rating number 4 is cheers. And rating number 5 is an ovation. Right now, we are landing on a hard 4. I am cheering this on. I want to see where this story goes, and I definitely want us to come back and revisit it. So I'm going to close here, and I'm going to say let's leave with a focus on what books are out there and return with what a great read looks like. Now, I want you to close this chapter with a bookmark. And until we meet again, thanks, Club, for joining me. And don't forget, hit that subscribe button because I want to keep doing this. I'm having a ball sharing these stories with you. Have a great one.